Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, I am Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder and corporate M&A and tech transaction lawyer at the law firm Baker Donaldson, advising companies in the deployment and scaling of technology. Since data is critical to every transaction, I help clients make informed business decisions while managing data privacy and cybersecurity risk. And when needed, I lead the Legal Cyber Data Breach Response Brigade.
And this episode is brought to you by Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. Well, hello. How are you?
I have a question.
I feel like I'm sitting next to a 5-year-old kid trying to play jokes on me.
Well, I have a question for our listeners. So I had to get my oil changed this morning, and as I was sitting in the coffee shop, I was able to get my wife a nice coffee. So how many minutes of goodwill do you think that I was able to obtain for such jiffy service?
Oh, I don't. Am I supposed to guess now?
Well, you should know that answer.
It was a very good cup of coffee, but the best part of the coffee is actually not that you got it, but the cool little topper, because it wasn't a plastic topper. It's this cute little wooden topper that I can actually reuse, and it was really lovely. But the coffee was also really good. Yes. How was your coffee ordering experience, Mr. I don't order any coffee?
I just read to them precisely what you told me to, and I guess it turned out okay. But so our audience learns the answer. I will have earned probably less than 5 minutes of goodwill for my coffee buying.
We'll really focus on what we're learning here because it's all about knowing your audience. So see, for me to get the appropriate coffee, I had to write it very explicitly to just allow him to take it and read. And then, when you're working with people, if you're trying to get them to understand what you need to do, you just have to understand the audience and what is it that they need. All right, well, let's try and tie this back to privacy and security, because that is why people are here, though the coffee was quite delicious. We have Jason Brenner, who is the RVP of Healthcare and Life Sciences at LiveRamp and has been working in the advertising and tech industry space for 20 plus years. Jason is leading efforts on building data connectivity solutions for the healthcare and life science industry. And this is a really growing, fun, fast-paced, and complicated area. So Jason, we're really excited to have you on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Welcome to the silliness. We hope you had some coffee, tea,
I was
water.
thinking about my coffee buying experience. I was just on vacation with my family. My wife's unfortunately had a bit of a sore throat while we were down there. And so I surprised her with some tea and honey on our last day. And she liked the tea a lot at the hotel. I think it was a lemon ginger mix. And so I took a few extra packets. I have no idea how much goodwill that has bought me.
Now, look at that. That was a nice surprise. Those are some ideas for you.
Of course, what are you really implying to the audience? That's what she's not saying is more important than what she did say. So, all right, let's learn more about Jason. So, Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Yeah, so as Jody said, I've been in ad tech and advertising marketing space for quite some time. Started out in legacy publishing companies, New York Times, Time Inc., and then got really excited about what was happening in the digital space and worked at a couple different ad networks, a lot in the mobile side of the business, mobile and geolocation, back when like geofencing was like, the hottest thing in town, a location like, ooh, that was the newest, coolest data set. And eventually brought me to LiveRamp to work with, identity and connectivity for clients. I think the through line is that I've always been really interested in solving big challenges for the companies that I worked with. I didn't want to kind of work around the edges. I didn't want it to be like, oh, that's kind of cute. That's kind of like a nice to have. I really wanted to help solve some significant challenges throughout my career. And I certainly think that today, as you guys know very well, identity, privacy, data collaboration are all massive topics. And data is such a powerful way that we help brands get closer to their customers.
Jason, in that vein, data collaboration, especially in healthcare and life sciences, is really powerful. It also truly comes with very large and complicated privacy and security challenges. How are you finding companies working through trying to be innovative, trying to solve some real problems, connect people, and also make sure that they are protecting that data and in compliance with different laws?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it is all changing very, very rapidly, right? Sadly, we're never going to see just like one, federal, probably privacy law to rule them all, so to speak. We're going to get, 50, maybe 51, if Canada becomes the next state, 51 privacy laws. That will be fun. It's going to be a fractured environment. So, look, I think marketers, will all tell you that they're spending more time with their lawyers, and they're spending more time with their lawyers, kind of upstream of the process. And ultimately, I think that's a good thing, right? Because, what that hopefully brings is a lot of innovation. And truly privacy by design, right? So that you're going into trying to solve problems through the lens of, okay, how do we do this in a way that we're not going to be midstream and have already sunk like a ton of, capital in coming up with a solution. And then, a lawyer says like, no, sorry, we actually can't do that. So I myself spent a lot more time talking to, chief privacy officers and lawyers early on in the scoping and discovery process. I think the good news is that, there are solutions to virtually everything that, our clients want to do in terms of data collaboration, right? Like, I've never gone down the path in, discovery and we get 6 calls deep. And then we finally figure out no, we got to tear that all up and kind of start from the beginning. I think usually if you put the customer as always at the kind of center of the experience, like how are we going to unlock better healthcare outcomes? How are we going to speak to customers in a way that they're going to actually, bring more value into their lives? That you're going to be able to get access to the data that you need, and customers will ultimately, appreciate, getting more value from the exchange.
Jason, you mentioned how you are working with marketing teams. They're bringing in their privacy teams and legal teams. And a lot of people struggle to sometimes make that happen. I'm curious if you could share a little bit of, as you're working with companies, when are you finding you're probably starting with marketing people and then they're bringing in the other teams? When does that happen? Is there anything that you can offer that might help someone listening trying to get their company to do the same thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I honestly, I suggested up front on the first call. If I feel like overall that the customer is kind of serious about moving forward, whether it's an existing customer or it's someone that I'm speaking to for the first time, I usually raise hey, how much does your chief privacy officer have an understanding about what you're looking to accomplish, right? Like, have you reviewed these use cases yet with privacy or your security teams or both? And if the answer is no, then I say hey, why don't we bring those folks in, right? Let's make sure that they kind of understand what's happening from a technical standpoint, like what the overall business objectives are. Because as always, I feel like getting that stakeholder alignment, look, it saves my team a lot of time, right? And so I want to understand, sooner rather than later about who the decision makers are going to be, and just make sure that it, is on the level with what that company's expectations are.
I like that. I really like bringing it at the beginning. A lot of people could learn from that.
Yeah, you can't there's no reason to kind of hide behind these things. I mean, one thing that I like that actually, I'm coming up, about to head out to San Francisco for our LiveRamp's annual client conference, Ramp Up, which you should attend next year. But last year, we had Steve Romany from Eli Lilly speaking as one of our keynoters. And Steve and I have been working together for many, many years, and one of the things that he talks about, and that this comes right from Lily's CEO, is that, you want to kind of gain the trust of customers really upstream in the process, right? So, Lilly has a strategy about building a lot more robust kind of first-party data and leveraging first-party data to power more of their marketing as well as other kind of aspects of their business. As I'm sure you guys know, they launched their own direct-to-consumer pharma channel. So they're now directly selling some of their products in the GLP-1 space to consumers. And one of the things that they really focus on is how do we work so that when Eli Lilly does ask for some personal information from the consumer, that they will gladly give that over, feel comfortable giving that over. So really think through like how brand awareness is also the time to start building trust really upstream from any kind of transactional discussion, which I don't know. If maybe this is just me and how I was raised, like that's just good manners, right? Like, you don't walk up to the bar and like, see someone that you like and you're like, hey, give me your number, right? It's like, you kind of build towards that. And so I think kind of, building that kind of trust and credibility, up front, really does go a long way. And I think Steve gave some great advice.
I spew that all the time. It is so much fun to hear someone else say the same thing.
Jason, you could have Jody come to your next conference in San Francisco because the last time Jody was in San Francisco, she ordered coffee and it was the first time she'd ever dealt with the vendor. And within 5 or 10 minutes, they were sending her a coupon. Hey, tell us when your birthday is so that we can give you a coupon. And needless to say, Jody was a data diva in distress over that corporate data collection.
Well, it goes to the entire
That's what Jason's saying.
Yep. I don't even know your brand. I don't know if I like your coffee. I haven't even had a chance to finish the experience. And you're asking for a really sensitive data point right away. Right. It is all about building the relationship with people so that I give accurate data and I want to be able to engage. So in the Eli Lilly example, why are you asking for this? And do I trust you? And if I do, then I will give you more accurate data. But there's a time and a place to be able to ask for that information. And companies want accurate data. Otherwise, they're making bad decisions. It's a no-win situation otherwise.
100%.
I think Jason's giving you an idea. Bad privacy hygiene is asking for someone's number up front. That's what that coffee company did.
I try to use a lot of these kind of real world, analogies, dating analogies. Yeah, it helps bring it home, right?
I think it resonates really well.
Good.
So, Jason, so, as you work with some of these really large global healthcare organizations, what are you seeing when it comes to these risks that I was giving the story with Jody in data sharing collaborations? How can these organizations mitigate these risks? Because as you said, it can get quite complicated and still make meaningful use of the data. What does that look like to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we have as you guys very well know, a pretty large ecosystem of companies, some large, some kind of startups that are in the space, and they're really trying to help these brands navigate how to use their data kind of safely and securely. There's, well-known companies like the one that I'm lucky enough to be employed at LiveRamp, where we're kind of, seen as the authority in data connectivity and identity, right? So, I think, just the years of experience we have, the number of companies that we're working with, we kind of come to the table with a lot of credibility as we're guiding clients. And then you have, some really wonderful startup companies that are out there. And, like I know you talked to my friends over at Integral a few weeks ago, and they've done a lot of amazing work, as a startup, working in the healthcare space, providing the necessary expert certification to ensure that if you're leveraging HIPAA data, that you're doing it in a privacy safe, de-identified fashion. And I think that, the idea is that I always talk to folks is like, work with the experts in their space, right? Like, if you're putting together, this kind of data collaboration, you got to think through the kind of regulatory environment that exists. And to me, that's kind of just like table stakes, right? Like you have to follow the law, like that should go without saying. So hire good lawyers, hire good experts, in privacy, and then really think about your ecosystem is, what are each of my partners doing to kind of help solve different facets of privacy and security. Like what ultimately is the business objective that I'm looking to follow, and then think about like how I'm going to assemble my internal team as well as my external partners to help me to navigate that, right? And no pun intended, but like a lot of that does come down to trust, right? And there's some standard things that we can all do. It's like, hey, this company that I work with, can I see their SOC 2? Can I see their, their latest, kind of protocols around how they follow privacy? And then a lot of it is, reputational, and who people think is going to give them the best results, and the best value for the investment. There's a lot of data out there, and there's a lot of partners that are willing to work with you collaboratively with that data. So really, to me, the question is like, what do you need to bring to the table in order to make that collaboration successful for the customers that you're ultimately trying to influence?
Given that, especially in the healthcare space, there's a lot of sensitive information. And you mentioned de-identification. So some companies worry about, is it really de-identified, or can I eventually re-identify it? And I was hoping you might be able to talk a little bit about, how does LiveRamp help with this de-identification piece, or where is LiveRamp's role in, enabling this data collaboration, but in a really privacy friendly way, especially when it comes to data like healthcare data?
Yeah, sure. So when I got to LiveRamp, 6 years ago, we didn't have a platform for de-identification of health data. We relied on third-party companies, some like folks like Datavant, to kind of tokenize the data. We still partner with Datavant and others who are in that space of generating tokens to de-identify, patient data, especially when you're linking that with other data sets. But we thought there was a lot of strategic value about building out a platform. So again, we asked the experts. We have a wonderful privacy and data ethics team, and we have since day one at LiveRamp. But they all said it's like HIPAA isn't necessarily our bailiwick, and so we're going to go out and we're going to find experts in the HIPAA space from a legal standpoint, from privacy, from a technology standpoint, where we're going to understand what are our requirements under the law, as well as like what's the right thing to do on behalf of our customers and their end users to build a truly privacy by design healthcare workflow. So we partnered with a few different folks, and Dr. Brad Malin, who is in you were in Nashville, you said last week. I know you're based in Atlanta, but so Dr. Brad Malin, who is a professor at Vanderbilt, he's one of the foremost experts in HIPAA, and he partners and consults with a lot of technology companies. And so we talked to him from kind of the beginning and said, like, hey, listen, we want to build the best system for de-identifying this data, so that when we are working with clients, they're really clear-eyed about, the protocols that we've gone through to ensure that we are leveraging their data in a HIPAA compliant fashion. And so he did a review of our technology, consulted with us on the build out. And at the end, he was able to put his stamp of approval and his certification on our technology. So now whenever I work with, folks and, it's a new client, or a new prospect, I should say, and they ask about our HIPAA program, I say, hey, I can send you Dr. Malin's report and you can read it. And, I've never had any blockers once folks kind of look at that report. So again, it's who people trust, right? And it's the authority that they bring to the partnership and the credibility. And I think that establishing early on about the thoughtfulness that you've gone through in order to make sure that you're protecting the data. I'll also just say, kind of zooming a little bit wider than just LiveRamp's healthcare practice, is that LiveRamp's business practice overall is minimize the amount of client data that we're touching, and eliminate it from our systems once we've accomplished the task of transforming their data from kind of raw PII, PHI into a de-identified token or ramp ID that's going to be leveraged as the currency of identity to connecting data sets together. So once we've gone that transformation, like once you take Jason Brenner and transform that to ramp ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like we delete all of the PII, PHI from our systems. We don't retain any of that. And in general, as I'm sure you guys have talked to others about this, it's like minimizing the amount of data you collect and the amount of data that you retain is just a really, really good business practice. And it's also part of like what just establishes trust between brands, right? Like I'm not doing anything weird with your data, right? I'm only doing what I'm being contracted and asked to do with it.
Jason, you mentioned tokenization earlier, and I think some people might not be familiar with that concept. Could you give a quick explainer on what is tokenization?
Yeah. So first off, I will say like I am not a cryptographer. And so there's a lot smarter people that you could ask, for a definition of tokenization. But essentially, what companies that are creating tokens or de-identifying PHI data is they are removing any identifiable aspect of a patient. So first name, last name, and address. And they are taking that information, though, to create a durable, interoperable ID that can represent that individual without ever sharing any of that underlying PHI data. And so when you kind of remove those kind of personally identifiable health information and to create that token, it's a one-way encryption, it's a one-way hashing, so that you can't ever reverse engineer once you've created that token back to that individual. It's the same process that we use when we create a ramp ID. I won't go into the nuances about the difference between a token versus a synonymous ID, but the idea is really similar in the sense of it's a one-way removal of PHI data, encrypting of that data, so that you can't ever get back to an individual's health records.
I think that was a really good explanation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. I was looking for that level because so many people listening might have heard of that, but not really understood what it was. I appreciate you explaining.
Jody, would you like to give us a good example of what a definition of hashing would be?
No, I'm going to let you do that.
So, Jason, when I have to explain hashing, the best way I do it is I said, think of a zip code. It's a finite, specific amount of numbers that can represent something else, because that's really what hashing is taking something large, condensing it into a very finite list. And so I've always found the zip code is a great way to explain what a hash is, because that's how
I like that.
So, well, you had the other one later that I loved, which is you don't go to the bar and ask for a phone number. Yeah, you don't, so
that's right.
Anyway,
I went to a conference and a person's almost entire presentation was relating marketing with dating.
Got it. The other, but something that I will point out, and especially in regards to marketing, most marketers, most anybody, if you have, cryptography solution 1 and cryptography solution 2, they're not qualified to say like, well, which one's better than the other, which one's more privacy secure. It's like you are to a certain extent relying on expertise of others in your organization or somebody that you trust or outside counsel to say like, yep, these guys are credible in their technology, right? To me, the most important thing, once people do that kind of baseline, yep, check, this is credible, this is defensible, how they're going at this process, is how can I use this data? What do I want to use this data for? And as the company that I'm working with kind of is there a network that they are tapped into so that I can leverage my data in the most strategically important, effective, frictionless way possible, right? And I think the great companies out there in the kind of data connectivity, data collaboration space are those that have those networks built out already. There's a lot of folks that are out there that say like, yeah, we do data collaboration. And it's like, great. Like, who's in your network? And it's like, it's like, who do you want to work with? And it becomes very clear that they don't have a network, right? They have maybe a cryptographic solution. They can tokenize data, but then it's like, great, what am I going to do with that data? Is it just going to sit there in my cloud infrastructure? Like, what if I want to send data to NBCU for an advertising campaign? What if I want to send that data out to, a measurement analytics company like Symphony, or Purple Lab to measure script lift? Like, do you have the pipes set up in order to do that? And I think that's just a really important business question to ask is like, what does that collaboration ecosystem look like? Because ultimately, I think that's what brands are buying into when they think about data collaboration. They should be thinking about it, not like, hey, what's the technology that you're using to encrypt my data?
Well, Jason, you bring up an interesting point, and I guess I want to ask you is, in the kinds of work that you do these questions come up sooner? Because I still have plenty of deals where nobody's talking about privacy or security until I get the contract and we start asking these questions. And all I've done is I need to ask the questions, but I've slowed down the sales process because the sales team and the others weren't asking these questions on the front end and, qualifying the company from these perspectives prior to getting to the contract. The contract's at the end and everyone's exhausted and just wants to get that part done.
Yeah, so I sympathize, right? And that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning. It's like it's always best to kind of bring lawyers and privacy folks in early. It's really interesting to me. There some folks kind of like they treat their lawyers or their privacy team like, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Like, no, you cannot possibly see the wizard yet. Like it's too soon. It's too soon. And I'm always like, it would be really good, if we can get the wizard to come out from beneath, the curtain, earlier on, because then it's just like we're going to hash this out, no pun intended, and kind of figure out like, well, can we do these things or can we not do these things, right? Because at some point, like, everyone else is going to be exhausted, but like you got fresh legs, right? Like you haven't seen this, you haven't been part of this deal, so you got all the energy going, and you're like. And I imagine maybe have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder if your team is just trying to like, shove something through at the 0 hour and say, come on, they're giving us a 10% discount, but we have to sign by 5 o'clock. Just do it, And so again, I think that it's just better always, just good manners. Like, let's bring in all the stakeholders in this decision. So.
Well, Jason, I think based on what you said, for the rest of the podcast, my co-host is going to be known as Elphaba.
I'm loving
Wonderful.
that analogy. I'm going to have some fun with it, actually. So right. With all this in mind, we always ask every guest, what is your favorite personal privacy tip that you might share with someone when you are out at a party?
Right. Don't make your password 1, 2, 3, 4. Or don't have your password, right? But in all honesty, it's like we kind of been touching upon this, but like, okay, if you're being asked to share kind of like your personal information, what value you're going to get out of it, right? Like what's the value exchange? There's a lot of convenience, that's out there when you kind of store your personal information, in a digital wallet, and sort of or an SSO system. But it's always like, well, what value are you getting out of this? Like, when Jody, you were asked, for your birthday, it's like you were like, I may never be in this coffee shop again. So like, it's not very valuable for me to give, this barista my birthday. So that's always the first thing. And then the second thing I tell people is like, just, ask some experts, right? There's a lot of resources that are out there that, some for free, some that are not for free. But there's a lot of expertise out there in terms of, how, an individual can think about like, how do I protect my data? And if it's my mom that's asking me, I just tell her, just give me your phone and I'll do everything.
That's funny. You don't find that funny?
I'm smiling.
You sit with your mom's phone. Actually, she doesn't ask you.
No, yeah.
Me.
I delegated that to you. So, Jason, my mom does the same thing.
Yeah.
But I have been very good at delegating that task to my co-host.
She thinks I'm more patient.
Well,
right.
See, I learned a great lesson from a law school professor who said, I was so bad at doing the diaper that my wife, after a while, said,
Yeah,
you
there is
stink
something to
at
be
it, I'm
said for
going to
that.
do it. See?
Yep.
She's turning
Yep.
red. Check into the YouTube version of this one. So, Jason, when you're not doing your privacy thing, what do you like to do for fun?
What I like to do for them. So beyond hanging out with my kids, which I absolutely do love, I have two children, 14 and 11, and they're tons of fun to hang out with. We just took a great trip down to St. Thomas together. It was just wonderful having the week just to kind of, splash around and have some good times with them. I also I love playing guitar. I've been playing music since I was 4 or 5. Used to play in a lot of bands, not as much anymore since becoming a dad. But still love to play. I also became a runner kind of late in life. It was about 6 or 7 years ago, right before I joined LiveRamp. I had one of those doctor's appointments, and not to reveal too much PHI, but they were like, wow, like you are really, really not going to live that long. You should basically, like, it was a George Costanza thing. It was like, you should do the opposite of every single thing that you're doing for your health. And I was like, okay, you're really being serious. And the doctor was like, yep, you really need to do a lot of things differently. And exercise was one of them. So I got into running, and I've now run 5 marathons. I just ran my first ultra marathon in December. And so I like to run a lot.
That's amazing. Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing and breaking down what some think is the mystery of LiveRamp and this data collaboration opportunity. And if people would like to connect with you or learn more, where could they go?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest. Jason Brenner. I don't use a pseudonym or anything like that. So very easy to find. And you can always email me as well. Jason.brenner@liveramp.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Truly a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.